Greetings. I want to do some white on black drawing today with my Koh-i-Noor white ink. I'm going to use this same black Canson paper. This paper, it's got a lot of reflection. I probably should move that light. So I'll find a different location on it because it has a lot of tooth, and I'm going to have to monkey with the exposure on this video so that you'll be able to see what I'm doing. That and the lack of opacity on this ink as it ages. So these are my isograph pens and Paradise Cove. Well, what can I say? Beautiful spot. Picture perfect. Many movies filmed here. And they used to film them down in front of our beach house. This is the west side of the pier here. My house, my beach house, was actually on the east side where I lived when I was a boy. And the beach is funny here. It actually runs east-west through Malibu. It doesn't run north-south. And in fact, on this stretch of beach, if you walk up the beach, you're actually heading in kind of a southerly direction. The reason why is because you don't think of up the beach or down the beach as a cardinal point. You think of it as the direction of the flow of the tide. You think of it in the directional flow of the tide. Kind of like walking up a river. It doesn't matter whether you're heading south, north, east, or west. Upriver is always against the current, and downriver is always with the current, same as the ocean. Up the beach is always in the direction of the approaching tide, and down the beach is always moving with the tide. When we used to go squidding on the west side of the pier, we could go squidding in front of our house too. We had lamps in front of it. My Aunt Clarabelle had one too. And when we turned them on, we could go squidding in front of our properties. But after they turned the old Paradise Cove Cafe into the Sandcastle restaurant, they put these great big lights, like 4 big powerful lights on the roof to illuminate the beach at night. And when they did that, boy, the squid would just come in droves. And so there was kind of an interesting light thing that would go on here with the light of the Sandcastle restaurant illuminating the pilings of the pier. And at the same time, on the top of the pier, there were little street lights on top of the pier that illuminated the deck. And there was kind of an interesting effect here where you have this kind of mysterious glow of the pilings underneath the deck of the pier. But it was great for squidding because there was so much visibility. You could just see the squid running around in the water. You could see a few sand sharks chasing after the smaller ones too, but never had to worry too much about the sharks. The little sharks, they weren't big enough to hurt you, but they were scary to see all the same when we would. This side of the pier was used for a lot of different things. This side of the pier is where the big parking lot was. I once saw Mary Ann and the professor standing out here. They were filming, and they were here all day, it seemed like, so that they could just go out onto the beach and look out. I could see them. They were saying some words to each other while they were standing there, and then they were done. And when I watched the episode later on, it was just maybe 15 seconds, their moment, and it took all day to film it. I watched them setting up to film a Rockford Files once too. I was eating lunch in the restaurant, and I was watching out the window, and again, they were just there all day long. It seemed like they were there for hours just to film him pull up in his car, get out, walk up the little stairs, and go into his trailer. The expense that these productions go through just for 5-6 seconds of footage is immense. I remember when they used to film in front of our house too, when they did a movie with Annette Funicello. I mentioned that last time, and like I said, I like to draw from memory, and I tend to speak from memory too, and sometimes I get things wrong. I mentioned Annette Funicello, and then I mentioned Suzanne Summers in a movie called Back to the Beach. It was actually Annette Funicello who was in Back to the Beach, and Suzanne Summers was in a movie called Zuma Beach, which they actually filmed here on the east side of the pier in Paradise Cove, and we used to always think that was very funny that they filmed Zuma Beach in Paradise Cove, because Zuma Beach is just like 3 miles up the highway. It's right around the other side of the point. The point is another well-photographed spot as well. They do all kinds of television shows and commercials. They did one of those big shows, one of those big summer shows for MTV there, and a story for another time. They did film the Big Lebowski where they throw the ashes and they all end up in the dude's face. They filmed that on the end of Point Dume, and they also did a couple of those Planet of the Apes films here on the point. A story for another time. Here on the west side of the pier, they didn't do, I don't remember them filming any Planet of the Apes here, but they did do Starsky and Hutch, and they filmed the storming of Villa La Cava on Baba Black Sheep here too. Saw them all coming down. They would fly the airplanes right along the edge of the beach. It was pretty cool. One of the big films that they filmed here was Airport 77. And I remember when they were filming it, they actually submerged a big piece of airplane in the cove here so that they could shoot some pickups. I don't know what they were doing. They filmed most of it in Florida. That movie was filmed mostly in Florida, but they had to do some pickups of people being in the water or some shots of the fuselage. And so they brought the whole fuselage of the plane out here to Paradise Cove, and then there was a big storm, and it got dislodged, and they had some trouble with it. It was a big mess. They made a lot of involved movies down in Paradise Cove. Years later, I went out to visit my parents, who were still living in Malibu. They were living on Point Dume, and I went down to Paradise Cove to have dinner with some friends, and there was a beach house in the parking lot of Paradise Cove, and they were filming American Pie 2. So that movie set, that beach house, is actually a movie set that was built in the Paradise Cove parking lot just to make that film. Another show that they filmed down there after I left was The New Gidget. They used to film The New Gidget down there, I guess. Stories, lots of stories. One of the things that was kind of fun when I was a boy was they had this big steam ferry that was used as a floating fishing barge. So, they would take you out on a fishing boat from the pier. They would take people out to go and fish off of this big old steam ferry that used to be in San Francisco. And they had a couple of fishing boats that used to run out of Paradise Cove, the Gentleman and the Speed Twin. And then there were other boats that would take you out to this big fishing barge. And they used to tow it in and keep it on the west side of the pier here in the wintertime so that it wouldn't get beaten by storms. Finally, one time they were moving it, and it got caught in a storm and it sank. But one of the interesting stories about that old steam ferry was that my grandmother, who used to live in Sacramento, actually went to San Francisco to the Cow Palace, and she rode on the steam ferry Sacramento. So she actually rode on that old steam ferry when she was a little girl to go into the big city and see the Cow Palace. Well, here's the picture. Thanks for watching.